guys, we are in introduction to classes. This for me is kind of where object-oriented programming really starts. So I'm a little bit excited to start it, especially after that awful bitwise operator section. So if this is your first time kind of working with objects, this is kind of how they work. You create a class, and you don't always create a class, but in this case we create a class. We can give it some class functions, meaning that like functions that we would normally call, like that we've written before, these are class specific, and they have each class has parameters. And for instance, in this case, we have a fruit class, so everything that may have a fruit, so the name, the color, the flavor, if it's poisonous or not. And in this case, we created a lemon object of the fruit class with those parameters, and then we can do the description and the is edible. So it may be a little new if you're unfamiliar with it, but if you've done any sort of object-oriented programming before, a lot of times it's just a matter of learning the new syntax. So we're going to create a class here called animal in the editor, and here we declare it an object. Now in the body of your class, use the pass keyword. Okay. So right now, apparently we can use the pass keyword here to say just ignore the fact that there's nothing here yet, which is kind of cool, actually. So we're going to remove the pass statement, and we're going to define it in it. This may sound a little weird, but this is basically initializing the parameters we're going to put into it, hence the init. Pass it the argument self. So self is kind of like saying that this parameter is equal to this parameter type of thing. And then we're just going to do pass here, saying do not worry about this quite yet. There we go. Make sure you do double underscores. Monster, please sponsor me. There we go. So pass in its second parameter. Alright, so now we're going to pass in a name parameter. So every animal we have is going to have a name, in theory. So we can take out the pass for the time being. So the self.name, this is equals name. This is basically saying that set this name equal to name when we call it. So it's just something you have to do for when you work with classes in general. So outside the animal class, create a variable called zebra. So now we're actually, it looks like, gonna be using this. So we're gonna say zebra equals animal, and his name, the only parameter we have right now, is Jeffrey. So now we have a zebra that's an animal named Jeffrey. Jeffrey. Oh, and then print it out. So now we want to print zebra dot name. And then there's our Jeffrey. Alright, so check out the examples in the editor, see how the init boots up each object. That's a good way of putting it, actually. It does kind of boot up each object. To expect a name and an age, then use the self.name. And self.age is assigned. Add a third attribute, is hungry. So we're going to add an attribute here, is underscore hungry. And self dot is underscore hungry equals is underscore hungry. So we're going to add that to there. And I think that's all we need to do. So this returns whether it's true or false. Alright, so check out the code in editor. Note that each individual animal gets its own name and age since they're all initialized individually. But they all have access to the member variable is alive. Since they're all members of the animal class. Okay, so what we're basically doing here is giving this another parameter for animal. It's inheriting it, and it's by default set to alive. So even though we don't put it in here, it's alright, it inherits it. Alright, so we're going to add a method called description. So same thing as we would, except it's within the class parameter. So def description. You should print out the name and the age of the animal it's called on, then create an instance. Alright, so print, let's try name, comma, age. I don't think we have to do self here. And then create an instance of animal. So we're gonna we're creating an instance. Hippo equals animal. And we're gonna say purple. Wasn't Barney kind of a hippo dinosaur looking thing? So we'll say Barney, and his age is, Barney's probably like 30. And then we're gonna call hippo.description. We're going to call the function on it, make sure it works. Description takes no arguments, one given. Okay, it looks like we have to call self on this also. So I thought maybe it inherited. I think in JavaScript it inherits the self after you do the init without messing around with it. Oh, alright, so they want this on separate lines. Easy enough. Just print it again, and we should be good. So Barney and 30. So after line 3, add a second member variable called health. So after line 3, we're going to say health. So we're setting the member variable, and we're going to set it equal to good. Then create two animals, sloth and ocelot. Give them whatever names you like. Alright, so let's create a new one. Sloth is equal to animal. We'll say the sloth is 5. It's a young sloth, I think, by standards. We'll just call him sloth, and we'll create ocelot, some Metal Gear Solid maybe, and make sure this is capitalized. Animal, and we'll just call him Solid Snake, and we'll make him probably about 40. And then finally, on 3 separate lines, print out. Alright, print hippo.health, print sloth.health, print ocelot.health. Bam. Good, good, good. Pretty good. Alright. So now we're switching gears, and it's not all animals and fruits. We're now working with a shopping cart. So create an instance of shopping cart called myCart. Initialize it with any values you like, then use addItem method to add an item to your cart. So here that's our class. We're going to say my_cart equals shopping cart. And we're saying my_cart dot add underscore item. And what do we want to, if you forget what there's a product and there's a price for the add item. So we are going to add, let's do Riot RP for League of Legends, and we'll say it's $19.99. Takes exactly 2 arguments, 1 is given. Oh, we're actually not adding an item. We are shopping cart here. We need to say customer name, and we'll do some shameless plugging. youtube.com/pizzapokerguy87. Alright, and then here we need to call my_cart again, dot add underscore item, and it takes in a product, and we'll change that to Python videos, and the price for that is free, so 0, and that should be it. So Python videos have been added to the cart, and the reason it does that is because when we hit add item, there's already a function built in that tell you what's going on here. So check out the code in the editor. They've defined the class customer as well as a returning customer. Note that you don't define the display card method in the body of returning customer, but it will have access to the method via inheritance. Alright, so we were talking about inheritance before. So this is a subclass of the customer object. This is the parent class. So what's going on here, what they're trying to say is that this display cart method, even though we don't define it here, we inherit it from our superclass. So we could also redefine it in here and it would take precedence over it, but in this case there's no reason to. Alright, on lines 1 to 4, we've created a class named shape. Alright, create your own class triangle. So, class triangle. And inside the triangle class, write an init method. Okay, so they want us to inherit from shape. And inside here, we need a def underscore init. And we need self, side 1, side 2, and side 3. So just, I mean, they're using some pretty blanket examples, but if we're just think about it logically for a second about what type of parameters you would need for a triangle, and a triangle always has 3 sides, and we're working with shapes. So a lot of these things may be a little, if you're new to object-oriented programming, just take a second, pause the video, and try to think about it logically, you know, what you may need. So, alright, let's see. So, inside set, alright, self.side 1 equals side 1, self.side 2 equals side 2, self.side 3 equals side 3, and I think that's it. Alright. So, create a new class called Parttime Employee that inherits from employee. So class Parttime Employee, it inherits from employee, just like the triangle did. Give your derived class a calculate wage method. So def calculate underscore wage that overrides employees, just what we were talking about a second ago. Takes in self and hours. Excuse me. Alright, so self.hours equals hours. Because part-time employees that calculate wage overrides calculate wage, it still needs to be set to self.hours equals hours. Yep. It should return part-time employees, so return hours times, and part-time employees make 12. Alright, so first inside your part-time employee method, we are going to add a new method called def full-time wage. Which kind of defeats the purpose of a part-time employee, with the argument self, comma hours. The method should return the result of a super call to calculate wage. So in this we want to return super, saying go from the super class. Dot calculate underscore wage, and in our calculate wage we need hours. Hours and self.hours We have to initialize it, hours. Then after your class, alright, so after we did that, derived comma self, what's derived? Alright, we'll come back to that. But it looks like it might have actually derived is probably a keyword. Doesn't look like it. So we can actually take this out because we're calling it. I think we can take this out because we're actually calling it from here, and it's already, they've already established that when we're doing this. All right, so create an instance of Parttime Employee called Milton, and this is a Parttime Employee. And when we create a Parttime Employee, they always have a name. In this case, we'll just name him Milton. Finally, print out the result of calling print Milton dot full underscore time underscore wage. And then full-time wage for number of hours is 10. So let's see if we did everything right. Derived is not defined. Online 19. Global name derived is not defined. Alright, so class, oh, it's not derived, that's a class, so employee. Super object has no calculate underscore wage, and super object has no attribute dot calculate wages. It does. Alright, so let's see here. Dot method slash arguments. Alright, so what do they want us to put in here? Do we need to call a parameter? Because I thought we called it right here. So line 16 full-time wage. So def full-time wage self hours return super from the employee class for the self calculate wage slash arguments. Do we need to pass an hour? I think we might need to pass an hours there. Self.hours? Super object has no. Okay, so let's look at, we know where the error is, we're just not quite sure what it is, and that was 14 of 18, which was, it looks like a job for return super. Ooh, so we need to return, we get the super from this, whatever is the super class of this class, and then we pass in hours, but not self.hours. Okay. So just a little bit of misunderstanding on our part is the super, we're getting the super for our part-time employee. We're not actually naming the super, we're getting the super from here, and then we're taking the hours. We don't need to do self.hours because we're actually we're calling it this function. And there you go, $200. Making that cash money. Alright, so let's do this again. We're defining a class triangle. And this is an object. It's not shaped this time because this is the first class we have. And we have def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then we have self angle 1, angle 2, angle 3. And self dot angle 1 equals angle 1. Self dot angle 2 equals angle 2. Self dot angle 3 equals angle 3. And that's all they want us to do so far. Cool. Now create a variable called number of sides instead of equal to 3. So, alright. Inside the triangle class, so not a new function. So we're going to just create a blanket variable here, number of sides. We're going to set it equal to 3 because this is always going to be true in a triangle. So now we're going to create a method called def. You should probably put one thing about Python is you always have to have the indentation right, so it's a little harder to follow sometimes. So I like spacing out my code a little bit. It's good practice also. A lot of like Eclipse and stuff like that will have like a control shift something that will do it for you, but not in this IDE, and we're not writing. Typically we don't write more than 50 lines of code on here at most. So create a method named checked angles. The sum of the 3 angles should return true if self does. Alright, so def, start at the beginning, def underscore check angles, and in here we need a self, and we need angle 1, angle 2, angle 3. The reason we need that is we're going to be adding them together, and then we're going to say so if self dot, actually we don't need the brackets, self dot 1 self dot angle 1 plus self dot angle 2 plus self dot angle 3 is equal to exactly equal to 180. Return true, else return false. Save and submit. Make sure to pass the self as argument to check the angles method. Self.angle2, self.angle3, self.angle. Make sure to pass self as an argument to check underscore angles. So self. Okay, so apparently we don't need to pass this parameter in because we already have it in our init method. So we can just call it because it's class specific. Because we're not gonna, if we were to do it this way, it would mean that we could override the angles. And I think that's why they don't want us to do that. They just want to be like, all right, well, these are the angles the triangle has. We're not trying to change them, and we're not trying to calculate the angles for a new triangle. We're trying to calculate the angles for the existing triangle, which makes sense. The way I did it, you could have done it, but that would have meant that you would be putting in the parameters every time instead of just calling it on it. All right, so create a variable named my triangle instead of equal new instance. All right, so my underscore triangle. Now we're going to create an instance of this object is equal to triangle, and we're going to have the size 90, 30, 60, and then we're going to print my underscore triangle dot number of sides. So the reason that number underscore of sides, the reason we're just calling that variable, say can you print out this variable for us? Triangle dot check, and now we're going to call the check angles. So this is going to print out the sum of the angles, which should be 180, or actually it returns true if it's 180. Alright, create a class name. Alright, so now we're going to create a class that inherits. So this is called equilateral, and this is inherits from triangle. Inside equilateral, create a member variable named angle. Create a member variable named angle. So angle is equal to 60. Create an init. Oh, not def. So def underscore init underscore And that has self with only the parameter self. Okay. And set self.angle and self.equal to self.angle. So self.angle1 is equal to angle. Self.angle2. April walked in. I just had to finish up what I was doing. So let's try and remember what we're doing here. So we were setting this equal to the angle because an equilateral triangle is a triangle with all three of the same sides. Self.angle1 equals angle. Make sure that you use a self qualifier. I did. Create an instance function with only the parameter self, and self.angle1 equals angle, self.angle2 so that equal to self.angle. So it says we're doing something wrong here. Let's go ahead and look at the form because we're probably off. Let's see here, self.angle1. Oh, maybe we need angle. I think that's what we need. Oh, no. Should take one argument. No, we already have our angle. Alright, so let's just look at the form real quick. Because it's probably something very small. I don't understand what I should do differently. Self.angle1 equals... Oh, okay. So we forgot that to include the self right here. So we're basically saying this is equal to this. And that should be it. Cool. So that was our first introduction to classes in Python. So what are we doing next with classes? It looks like we're going to be making a car and doing an object around classes in regards to cars. So as always, comments, donations, suggestions, WordPress ideas, coding ideas, anything like that is appreciated, and I will see you guys in the next video.